Evening. Evening, everyone. Welcome to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification course. You can be seated. Glad to see everyone here for class. Got a little rain in Texas here. It's supposed to have some over the next 3 days here. I tell you what, I am not looking forward to the cold winter days. I know some places have already gotten upwards of 20 inches, and not in Texas here, but farther north. But we're going to try to heat you up with some knowledge here from the responsibility unit. So kind of get your fireplaces of your mind stoked and get ready as we prepare to go into chapter 2. Now, of course, we are in, like I said, unit number 5 of the intermediate series, the responsibility unit here, which is the last of the intermediate series before we go into the advanced. And in the last class, William finished out chapter 1, which was You Can Count on Me, and went over the review for that, which is closed out that chapter and is leading us into what we're going to be going over this evening, starting on chapter 2, developing a responsible character. And as always, we kind of go over a little bit of review from the previous class, and we'll get into that as we move forward in this unit. But let's just turn over in our books to page lesson plan 2, page A, and you see the title page there. Lesson plan 2, page A, chapter 2, developing a responsible character. Now, this here, as we always mention, as you see at the beginning of every chapter in the book, and each of the intermediate series has 7 chapters in the book. The advanced, when we get into that, there's 5 chapters. But you have this note to the teacher, because it's just as important for us as teachers to know the information is one thing, but remember, like I covered last time I spoke and had the class, we have to, this has to be kind of ingrained in us, because there are going to be many situations and opportunities for us to teach our students potentially outside of a classroom setting. Okay, so we have this note that's given to every teacher to kind of preface the procedures, the objectives, the purposes, and the procedures, and so forth, to kind of give the teacher, hey, this is what you're going to be doing. This is what we're facing in society. This is what our children are dealing with. This is your job. This is your note as we begin this lesson. And also we have the note to the student as well. So on lesson plan 2, page A here, under note to the teacher, we see it is one thing to tell children that, just reach to turn that thing on silent. It is one thing to tell children that they need to be more responsible. It is quite another thing to teach them, right? It's one thing to tell them, it's another thing to teach them. And we see this all throughout society. I've even seen it in situations where court cases were being decided on, and the judge or the magistrate or whoever it was telling the defendant, you need to be more responsible. You need to practice self-control. You need to be honest. You need to not do this. You need to. But the problem is, in society, as we all know here, is that a person has to be taught to in order to do, right? And even in the system of incarceration, or which is, oddly enough, it's named correctional, the correctional system, if you look up in pretty much every state in the United States, all 50 states, I believe, all 50 states, they all have what's called departments of corrections. Department of Corrections, or DOC, and everyone who is an inhabitant there has a DOC number, okay? And you would think by that terminology, or by that title, or by that name, that whole department would be developed for the purpose of developing behaviors that are corrected, opposite of the behaviors that got that person there to begin with. But speak to anybody anybody who's come out of that penal system and ask them, did you learn how to improve your character to not make those choices again? Most of them, if they're honest, will tell you, no, I didn't. I learned how to be a better criminal. I learned how to hide better the things that I was doing. Because what do you do when you stick, people who've been trained in society how to engage in immoral behaviors, who've been trained or been taught that they're not valuable, who've been trained that these other people aren't valuable. You don't have to show respect. People have to show you respect. You don't have to show them respect. What occurs when you stick people with that same mindset in one, pretty much most of ours, are overcrowded space, right? Well, those behaviors are magnified. They're multiplied, okay? Now, there are a few. Now, this is not to say that that's the case with everybody. There are a few who, realize some of the choices that they made got them there, and then they set their mind and they're determined through self-discipline and education and so forth to come out of there. And when they do, they won't make those same choices again, okay? But the departments of corrections really aren't, doing those, fulfilling those responsibilities right now. So this is why we teach in the Peaceful Solution that knowledge is power. Okay, we've gone for thousands of years, and the United States has been established for 500 something odd years, and people have, for the most part, been kind of just doing what they think is right, and everybody has their definition of what they think is right. And then what does society do? Well, we've got to pass laws, right? We've got to form a legislation. We've got to form a government. We've got to pass these laws because this person is doing this, so we have to pass a law against this. We have to pass a law against that. But have laws stopped criminals from committing crimes? Honestly. I mean, we have laws on every book against theft, against murder, right? Have all the murderers and thieves ceased because of the laws that are on the books? No, they haven't, right? And people call for harsher judgments, harsher, longer sentences and so forth. Well, that's not going to fix the problem. We have to teach society, and I'm saying all of this because we're talking to the teachers here. This is how crucial, how important, how vital the role of a teacher in the Peaceful Solution is. Because you're not just spitting out some words when you're in front of your classroom or when you're in an environment of teaching. No, you're actually providing or presenting an influence to somebody of how to develop or display, teach through your displaying of a positive character, develop a positive character in themselves, right? So every opportunity you have, we should really take it and remember that, yes, we are teaching by everything we do. Not only the things we say, but also what we do. Remember, part of the responsibility of a teacher is to role model the behaviors that we're wanting to see coming forth from our students. So we see here, it's one thing to tell children that they need to be more responsible. It's quite another thing to teach them step by step how to develop a responsible character. And that just reminded me of what we covered all the way back here on page 1 when we first got into this unit here. At the very top under the note to the student, it says, have you ever heard the saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day? Teach a man the fish and you will feed him for a lifetime. How can being taught to fish as opposed to being given a fish change the course of someone's life? Well, the answer to the question is simple. When you are taught, you gain the knowledge needed to make choices that can lead to success. And I've heard many stories throughout the years, both inside and outside of the Peaceful Solution, and how people have made the statements that, once somebody taught me this, everything just was laid out before me, right? It was so easy. It was so smooth. I understood, how to go about doing these things, or I understood this about myself, or I understood that I was the person that was holding me back from achieving my goals, right? I had to change my attitude, change my way of thinking and so forth. So this is how important teachers are, because when you teach people, when you teach people, you actually open up a whole new door of opportunities for them, right? Things that they didn't even realize were available. And then at the beginning of the next paragraph there, it says, being taught how to develop moral character is much like being taught how to fish. All right, so let's go back to page LP2, page A. And then it says here, in this lesson, students will learn that becoming a responsible person does not occur overnight, nor does any other character trait occur overnight. Remember, we tell our students to, that they have to continue to work on things. They're going to make mistakes. So they're going to make bad choices, occasionally. They might forget what they've learned, so they've got to go back and rehearse it. But it's not going to occur overnight. But they have to continue to push forward towards the goal. And that's when we covered in the acceptance unit, we covered purposes and goals. There's purpose to it all, and setting goals, be a goal setter and so forth. When you set goals and you understand your purpose, you know that there's going to be difficulties along the way. You know that there's going to be setbacks. There's going to be things that try to throw you off course. But as long as you know where the course is, you can get back on and continue forward, right? And so as teachers, we need to just encourage our students. Yeah, they're going to make bad choices, and they're probably going to feel bad about those choices. Well, we don't come there and make them feel even worse about their choices, right? They already know it. And a lot of times it's just a matter of, well, do you know what led to the choice? You have to ask them, just like we do when we go into the lessons, ask stimulating questions. Do you know what it was that led to the choice? If they do, then you can ask them, well, what do you need to do to fix it? What have you learned in the peaceful solution that can help you fix that, the consequence, the choice, the situation that you've gotten yourself into, and how can you prevent it in the future, right? So this gives them an opportunity to kind of explore the things that they've learned throughout the years and kind of pick fruit, so to speak, from the gardens of their mind so that they can make better choices. And I'm telling you what, they feel so much better when they make that decision themselves and see the benefit that comes from making that decision, as opposed to you just telling them and they just following your instructions. Now, there's a benefit from that too. But remember, when a person practices self-control and they reap the rewards from it, man, it kind of just drives that behavior and that decision, that choice deeper into a person's mind. They value it more, right? They value the knowledge that they learned that led to the reward more. And so as a result, they'll seek more how to make better choices in the future. It kind of becomes like a positive snowball or a positive ripple effect in a person's life. Now, in this lesson, students will learn that becoming responsible does not occur overnight and is, in fact, a combination of several traits such as self-discipline and determination. Now, self-discipline, let me see here. Did I put that in here? No. That's in the respect unit, which we just got finished reading on page 60. Well, that just got finished, but not that long ago. On page 160, it's under consistency and discipline. And of course, self-discipline is, doing it yourself, right? Disciplining yourself or practicing this discipline yourself. And the definition on 160 in the respect unit under discipline is the ability to control thoughts and actions in order to establish a pattern of behavior. Now, you ask anybody who's achieved what they would accomplish success in whatever it is, if it's a career, if it's developing a skill, building a business, whatever it is. One of the key things that I found that's common through all of them is discipline, self-discipline, right? Because you can have goals all day long, but if you don't, A, put forth the effort, take the initiative, and B, have self-discipline to kind of guide yourself in these things or develop these, like it says, the ability to control thoughts and actions, you'll never establish a pattern of behavior that would lead to the outcome that you're working to achieve. So self-discipline is very important. And then on page 159 in the same respect unit. This is chapter 6 in the respect unit. Under determination, because this is what we're talking about here on lesson plan 2, page A. A combination of several traits such as self-discipline and determination, of course, will help a person become responsible. And it says to have determination is to have the ability to set your mind in advance, right? You've got to set it. It's like the old infomercials, set it and forget it, right? Well, we can't forget it, right? We set our minds on something, we can't forget and go willy-nilly off doing whatever we want. We have to set our minds, and then we have to keep that goal in sight. That's the old idiom, keep the goal in sight, keep the end in focus, so that you know exactly where you're going. If you've ever been hiking, you wouldn't have to necessarily be hiking, but anywhere where you have a target or a goal, and you're looking all the way over here and you see this mountain peak, that's the place that you're wanting to go. Now, it's not a straight line there when you're hiking through the mountains like the Allegheny Forest or anything like that. You've got, valleys and peaks, and you've got to go around terrain and through rivers and so forth, but you've always got your mind set on that goal. So irregardless of the courses that you might have to take to get there, the goal is right there in your sight. If you lose sight of that goal, then who knows where you're going to end up, okay? And that's why it's important to set your mind, to set that in your mind, set a goal in your mind, understand what your purpose is and the steps that you need to take to get there, and to reiterate in the students, because a lot of people today, the attention span is all over the place, right? It's all over the place, and it's hard. It's getting harder even for advertisers to keep a person's attention long enough to get their message out. And this is why even on certain social media platforms, they've gone to what's called shorts or reels and things like that, shorter snippets of videos that are like 5, 10, 15, or 30 seconds, to get a message out there, because people just don't have the attention span to sit and watch something for 15 minutes, right? But this is kind of where our society is going off to. The smart devices are making people dumber. The dumbing down of society is not coming forth from places like this. It's usually right in the person's own hands. And so this is why education is the key, right? We'll always have to go back to that in order to move forward in society. So to have determination is to have the ability to set your mind in advance to do those things, notice here, that are moral and acceptable, right? Not, man, I was determined to outrun the cop after I passed him in a speed zone. Okay, that's not the determination we're talking about, right? You have to tie it all together. Being determined to do those things that are moral and acceptable. Once you have been taught what is right, the next step is to stand firm. That also goes along with being determined. Having this self-discipline and determination, it's not just enough to have your mindset, but now, remember what we were taught in the previous unit, there are going to be situations that test your resolve. Test your resolve to maintain your positive character. Well, it's no different in developing this character trait of responsibility. And, of course, determination, self-discipline, self-control, all these things are characteristics, key traits, and so forth that are needed in order for you to develop a responsible character. So you must set your mind. The next step is to stand firm and do not let anything or anyone influence you to do otherwise. Remember what we talked about in influences: anything or anyone who has the ability to affect the way we think, feel, and act. And remember what an influence is. It's something that it can come from anything, right? It can be received from any of our 5 senses: touch, smell, feel, taste, and sight. Oh, I missed some. We got hearing too, right? Did I say hearing? Hear, sight, smell, touch, and taste. Right. Okay. So any of those things can come in through those 5 senses, and it can influence the way we think, we feel, and we act about a particular thing. By planning ways to appropriately handle negative situations, you can avoid risk-taking behavior. and the influence of negative peers. Knowing what you are going to say ahead of time will give you the courage to say no when the need arises. So that tells us a little bit, it reminds your students a little bit about determination and self-discipline. Actually, it reminds us of pointers of what we need to remind our students. Okay, and as a teacher, you can go back and rehearse some of these things, because remember what we're covering here. We're covering the note to the teacher. All right. So we'll see here. It says other concepts that will be covered in this lesson are, and we have 4 bullet points, or 4 points there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Are 1, developing responsibility begins with how we think about ourselves about ourselves, others, and our duties and obligations. How we think about ourselves, others, and our duties and obligations. Now, you remember what we talked about in the previous unit about duties and obligations. One of the things that it's stressed that, and we'll get to it in a little bit there, that, when we have our duties, when we have responsibilities, we need to do it with a positive attitude. What is an attitude? The attitude is simply the way you think and feel about something. Okay, so it needs to be positive. Otherwise, as was mentioned by the previous teachers, if we have a negative attitude about what we're assigned to do or the duties we're expected to carry out, then more than likely we're not really going to put 100% into it, right? It's like when people are upset and they have to cook a meal and they just, open the can and, slap it on the plate and, maybe slap it in the microwave, put a little heat on it, throw a couple of hot dogs down there and a couple of slaps of bread and say, well, here's dinner, here's supper, no care, no thought, no anything went into it. As opposed when a person is feeling great and they're positive, and they might actually stir up the stuff in the can a little bit, make it look a little more appealing, put a little split down the middle of the hot dog, and make it look gourmet. They put a little more effort and care in it, maybe toast your bread some. And that reflects, even in in marketing, they teach a lot of the people who are in marketing, whether it's telemarketing or they're, face-to-face sales, going into a dealership or a store or door-to-door sales or whatever, they tell them, have a positive attitude. Even when you're on the phone, have a positive attitude, smile while you're speaking to the customer, because that reflects in your voice. And, attitudes are, they give off certain frequencies, and people can tell if you're just here because you want to be, just because you have to be here, right? It's just a job for me. I don't really care about all you students. I'm just here to get my tenure so I can collect retirement. And I've actually heard that from teachers when I was in school. I'm just trying to finish out my tenure so I can go ahead and collect my retirement. And you could see it in the way that they taught the students. It was really a laid back, nonchalant, I really don't care if you learn or not. I've been here so long they can't fire me anymore, because of teachers' unions and so forth. And that's really sad, because it was a missed opportunity for the students, or a missed opportunity for them to create and instill certain characteristics and so forth in their students. But anyway, so developing responsibility begins with how we think about ourselves, others, and our duties and obligations. And I have a note here for something in the acceptance unit here on page 4. Let's see, make sure that I think that might be under. Oh yeah, page 4, and that's under. Oh yeah, positive side, a positive side of me. It says accepting you as an individual. Do I actually have that as a slide? No, I might have that. I think that's in one of my slides. I think maybe slide 4. The positive side of me. The positive side of me. It might be slide. I think it's slide 4. There you go. It says accepting who you are as an individual with moral potential begins with evaluating how you think about yourself and your abilities. So you have to all the way back here in this unit, unit 2, we were teaching the students that they have to evaluate how they're thinking about themselves and their abilities. And, to think that people don't think negatively about themselves just because they're smiling doesn't mean that they have those negative thoughts. And, that is about themselves. And so as teachers, we have to continue to reiterate and so forth the important aspects of these concepts that they're learning. In this case, we were talking about acceptance, but, getting them to understand that they should think positively about themselves because they do have potential, right? Their moral potential, it begins with them evaluating how they think about themselves and their abilities. Now, at the same time, they've got to want to, right? They have to want to improve themselves. So in doing so, they'll actually take the time to evaluate how they're thinking about themselves and their abilities, and then be honest. If they're going to be honest, they're going to say, okay, I can see I need to make improvements in this area or that area of my life, right? But as teachers, we have to put that forth before them, because normally they're not going to just do that on their own. Evaluate myself. Why do I need to do that? Well, because in doing so, you can see where you need to make improvements. You can see where you're strong at, right? And you can build on those strengths and so forth. So it says, accepting who you are as an individual with moral potential begins with evaluating how you think about yourself and your abilities. Although at your age you have not reached your full moral potential, you can accept the type of person you are growing into and determine some of the things that are important to you. And developing a positive moral character should definitely be the main priority in your life, right? That should be the main thing that we focus on, because, of course, in having a positive character, it's going to help you to achieve help them to achieve many beneficial things in life. All right, so let's get back to our lesson plan 2, page A. And notice the second bullet point there. It says self-control, which is in, we covered that in the self-control unit, pages 1 and 4. And discipline are important parts of making responsible choices. Now, you see this combination in many places. Self-control and determination, self-control and discipline, right? Self-control is used with many things. In fact, I'll read you a little bit out of the self-control unit here. And the importance of it. I think I grabbed the character unit. And the importance of it, and why we have to. Well, I don't have my self-control unit. I've got 2 respect units up here. Well, anyway, we know that self-control is controlling the way you think, because your thoughts lead to feelings, and controlling the way you feel because the feelings lead to choices that will lead to actions that will bring about consequences or rewards. But, you have to couple all of these other characteristics with self-control, because that's the foundation of all other positive character traits, right? It's necessary. It's essential for the formation and the maintaining of other positive character traits, because you have to practice self-control to be consistent in standing for what you've proven to be morally correct, right? Because a situation might come up where this person who you might not be very close with tries to get you to do something. Well, I don't know you. Why would I listen to you? But this person who you are very close with might try to influence you to do something that's negative or immoral or inappropriate, right? And you might be more willing to listen to them because you're close to them, right? They're associated with them. They grew up together. They're looking out for their best interests. But a person with self-control is going to stop, and they're going to think. They're going to think about what they're being influenced to do, and then compare it to everything that they've learned in the peaceful solution, consider their options, and they're going to proceed with the right choice. And that requires self-control to do so. Point number 3 there, it says compassion plays a key role in being responsible towards others. This word compassion is it means to see the suffering of others with the desire to relieve them, to relieve them of their suffering. And when you think about what you're learning here in the peaceful solution, this is one of the greatest forms of compassion that you can show towards other people, by becoming educated in the lessons, the systems, the concepts, the skills, whatever you want to call it, that will help you to actually be able to teach people how to resolve their problems, how to prevent their problems, how to actually be a peacemaker. Imagine if we had a whole generation of students who have been trained and who value the peaceful solution in office, in political offices right now, running big Fortune 500 companies, who were dealing with oil and gas and so forth. I have a sneaking suspicion that life would be much more pleasant right now. Things would be a lot cheaper because they'd be considering everyone, not just, okay, what does my bank account look like? Ooh, okay, we're going to need to raise the price on that. I've got a mortgage to pay. It's not going to be that. It's going to be considering what's beneficial, yes, for themselves, but also for others as well. Right now, we live in a society where it's, as been mentioned, it's a dog eat dog world. It's a dog eat dog world. Be the king of the hill. Be at the top, the king of the hill, top of the mountain. I remember that game that we used to play when we were children, that king of the hill. It's been mentioned a few times. The goal was to be the only person standing at the top by any means necessary. You'd even drop kick your friend off the top of that hill in order to be the one standing up there, right? Do a DDT or whatever it was, But that was what was being instilled in our mind, that it's okay to hurt or to push someone down in order to achieve your goal of being at the top. And remember everything that we went over under leadership, the character unit and so forth, right? And the acceptance unit and what it means to be a leader, the characteristics of a leader, what a leader is and what a leader is not. Leaders don't push other people down. They help others up. They lift them up. They rise to the occasion. They set the example and so forth. And this is what we're also training in our students. We're training them to be positive leaders, but they've got to get these character traits instilled within their mind first. So it says compassion plays a key role in being responsible towards others. And then the last point there, it says having a positive work ethic shows that you are accountable for your duties and obligations. And that's one of the last things that William talked about in the previous class there, about this positive attitude towards your work ethic, a positive attitude towards your duties and responsibilities. It helps you to develop this positive work ethic. On page 11 here in our responsibility unit, and we see here the do's and don'ts of responsibility. And that first paragraph, it says, if you listed chores, this was from the previous answer worksheet there, or even taking care of a pet as some of your responsibilities, then you're right. Then you are right on target. All of these responsibilities are age appropriate. In other words, you have both the mental and physical capabilities of successfully completing these tasks. Being responsible, however, does not mean only completing the task. It also includes completing the task within a given time, having a positive attitude, and doing as instructed. Now, sometimes you might deal with your students and they might have one of three of those, or two of three of those, or zero of three of those. Well, as a teacher, that gives us the opportunity to kind of, put it in reverse a little bit and then go back and rehearse that lesson, right? So it can be in their mind, because they didn't grasp it, or they didn't see the importance of grasping it and so forth. So, we have to be patient in what we're in our teaching abilities and so forth. And then you see there under here is a list of some do's and don'ts of responsibility. And the very first one there, under the do's, it says, number one, have a positive attitude about your duties. And this will transition not only from the child or the student in school and what they're learning then, but it'll actually transition all the way into adulthood and into their career. The importance of having a positive attitude about their duties. And it says a positive attitude towards your duties. Notice here what it shows. It shows maturity on your part. When you tell somebody to do something, I got to do that. You want me to erase the board? You want me to do homework? Right? You want me to whatever the case might be. And immediately you see the attitude of the student, and you know that they're not going to get as much as they could get out of the lesson or the task that's given to them, because their mind is already set against it, because they don't really want to do it. They don't have a positive attitude about it. And this is something that I've shared with students. I've shared with children. I've said, listen, even if it's something that you might not really have a strong desire to do, just have a positive attitude about it. I had a statement that I don't think I made it up or coined. Somebody made something else that was similar to it, but I just associated it with things I didn't like when I was growing up, which were those hideous green legumes called lima beans, right? I didn't like lima beans at all growing up. And so I told my children, I told them that story of how, when my mom would fix the meal and we'd have lima beans and maybe some chicken or something like that, or there were lima beans in the mixed vegetables, and we had chicken and applesauce. I loved applesauce, though. Boy, man, I could eat a whole jar of that stuff, and then a nice big glass of Kool-Aid or whatever, which there was only like 3 flavors when I was growing up. But anyway, I determined eventually, lima beans are not my most preferred, so I prefer to get those out of the way first. Let me go ahead and just get rid of those lima beans so I can enjoy my applesauce and my chicken and my Kool-Aid, right? And I can finish my meal with a smile on my face. So I told them, I said, you just have to have the mindset of just eat the lima bean, right? Just eat the lima bean, get it out of the way, and then move on to the things that are more desirable, because there's going to be a lot of lima beans in life that you're going to run into, okay? And so that's what we have to do, but we have to have a positive attitude, and you can look at that and say, oh man, lima beans again? Or you could be like, all right, well, the lima beans are the gatekeeper. I've got to get through those lima beans to get to that chicken, right? It's all about mindset. And people don't realize one of the things they really take for granted is controlling their own thoughts. I mean, everybody is able and capable of doing that for the most part. Most people are, right? But they just kind of just let it go, right? If we can get control of our thoughts, life can seem a lot more brighter, a lot more bright. Okay. And tasks can seem a lot easier. Time can go a lot faster. And we can get a lot more out of life because we're looking for opportunities to become better and to become, what's the word I'm looking for? More beneficial to others. So instead of looking at your chores as a waste of time or a drudgery, be glad that you're given an opportunity to contribute to your household. By doing your chores, you help your family members. Doing homework or class projects is your opportunity to learn and increase your knowledge. And then at the very bottom there, you see where knowledge is power. All right. Now the next paragraph there says, as educators, we know that simply instructing a child to read a book will not make that child capable of reading. Just try it. Just go up to a 3 or a 4 or a 5-year-old and say, read that book. You need to read that book. You need to learn how to read that book. What is wrong with you? Why aren't you reading that book? I told you to read it. And then you bring out when I was your age, we didn't even have books. All we had was parchment. Well, we weren't that old, but but just telling them that they need to do something doesn't make it so. And this is like I said before, this is the importance of teachers. We have to show them how to accomplish the goal. And you see here in the next sentence, it says, we must teach. So this is, instruction is a part of teaching, but just instructing alone without showing them how, you kind of leave them kind of guessing, right? But we must teach. And you see a difference in there. Instructing is to direct or command to do something. To direct or command to do something. To teach is to show or explain to someone how to do something. All right? When you teach them, you show them how to do it. And instruction is a part of that. So we must teach a child to read step by step. And I don't know how many steps there are in learning how to read. I don't remember. But I mean, in dealing with children today, you you know that there are certain fundamentals that must be grasped in order for a child to read. You can't just set down in front of them the word supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, or whatever word it is, and expect them to know what that is, right? They've got to learn, first they've got to have an environment where they can learn, an environment that is conducive to learning. Remember what we learned in character chapter 1, how environment is very, very important. It can, direct you in negative ways, or it can direct you in positive ways. So they've got to have a healthy environment to learn. One of the first things they have to learn is their alphabets. That's one of the first things children learn in school. Why? Words are composed of letters. You can't know the words if you don't know the letters. Then they've got to learn the sounds of those letters, right? That's a part of them learning how to read, how B makes B, and G makes G, and T makes T, right? And English gets really confusing, It's like, wait, I thought that makes the H sound. Well, no, the H is silent in this word, right? So it gets a little bit confusing, but generally speaking, they've got to learn the words, they've got to learn the letters, and they've got to learn the sounds. And then they've got to learn how the letters, when they are put together, they make certain words. And that word sounds like this. And then with children, they have what they call our sight cards, or sight words. And flashcards are a very great way to learn anything, not just for children, but for adults too. But those sight words are simply words that they can say without having to sound out, right? They can see C-A-T, cat, D-O-G, dog, and so forth. So, and then after that, they can put those words into a group of words and make sentences, and then so forth until they get older and they can understand comprehension. But they have to go through all of those steps in order to learn how to read, and you can't just go to them and say, read. And this is where a teacher comes in, because a teacher will understand that there is a process, there is a system to everything that occurs. You remember what we talked about the building blocks of a positive character. The blocks, first off, have to be acquired. Then you have to know where to put them. You've got to have a solid foundation to lay them on. And then you have to know how to stack them properly in order for it to be strong and to endure. And this is what we're instilling in our children, but it's something that can only be seen by their behavior, the choices that they make. So we must teach, you see the word there, must. We must teach a child to read step by step. In like manner, we must teach our children that there are specific traits and attitudes that they need to acquire if they are to develop responsible characters. Let us, that is, as teachers, remember we're still talking about the note to the teacher here, let us, through education, give our children the skills they need to become conscientious, caring, and hard-working adults. And I made a teaching tip thing here. Acronyms kind of help me to remember certain things, and I think it's possibly maybe slide number 2, possibly teacher tips, and it's called TRAPCON. There, TRAPCON. It's the TRAPCON technique. I don't know if anybody ever heard of that one, the TRAPCON technique. No, that's because I just made it up. I was waiting for somebody to go, oh yeah, I've heard of that one. Yeah. This is the TRAPCON technique. And you see here, it kind of covers what we just talked about here. Don't just tell them, teach them. Role model the desired behavior, right? This is something that we've learned throughout the previous lessons, right? You want to teach the students, but as teachers, we also need to role model these behaviors. Accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to fall short. We shouldn't focus on their mistakes or their bad choices. We want to accentuate the positives. Show, well, you know what, but you at least you did this, or at least you came here, at least you saw a resolution to the problem, right? And this will reinstill those positive traits within their mind of seeking the authority when they make a bad choice instead of hiding from them, right? A lot of times when people make bad choices, they want to hide from the authority because they think they're gonna get in trouble, or they're gonna be yelled at, or the authority's gonna be angry with them or whatever. But we want to create an environment and a relationship with our students where they want to seek us out because they know that they can trust us to guide them in the right direction, and we truly care about them and we want to help them to succeed. And then the next point is to be patient, right? Patience is as it said, is a virtue. So we have to, we know it's not going to occur overnight. I've been teaching you this for a solid week now, and you're not responsible? Well, no, it's going to take some time. And also consistent. Be consistent. So that's the patented TARPCon technique there. I think it's going to be in schools pretty soon here. Well, I don't think so. But so these are the points that we're looking at here under our note to the teacher as we get into this lesson of developing a responsible character. So let's look over to lesson plan 2, page C. Lesson plan 2, page C. And this is where we start getting into learning, developing a responsible character under this lesson plan here. And then we get our purpose and objective is students will learn that acquiring self-control, compassion, and a positive work ethic will enable them to develop a responsible character. So we've got 3 points, right, that I wrote off to the side for myself because this is a part of what our purpose of an objective is. Self-control, compassion, and a positive work ethic. Acquiring these things will help them to develop a responsible character because that's the main theme of the chapter that we're in right now. And of course, the materials are students' handbooks. And then procedure 1 here, it says review the previous lesson, you can count on me by asking students the following questions. What does it mean to be responsible? What does it mean to be responsible? And of course, some of their answers might include being responsible means to fulfill your obligations to yourself and others and being accountable for your actions, right? And of course, on page 1 and 3, we have that information presented for us under you can count on me. And it says here in the second paragraph on page 3, like we just got finished reading in the note to teacher, responsibility must, like respect and self-control, must be developed over time. Being responsible means you are someone others can count on to fulfill your duties and obligations. On page 3 in the middle paragraph there in the responsibility unit, but most of all, you can count on yourself to make choices that are positive and supportive of your moral character development. And then here it says here, letter B, what are 2 responsibilities that all people must share? And it says we must be morally responsible for each other, and we must be responsible for our environment. And that was on page 8 there in chapter 1. And we see here under shared responsibilities in the very last paragraph, it says, regardless of how varied our duties are, there are some responsibilities that should be shared by all. And the number 1 there, it says, we are morally responsible to each other. A moral person is able to choose between right and wrong and is respectful of others. And notice, he would never intentionally hurt others or steal from them. When we lack moral responsibility towards each other, society suffers. And that goes back to that ripple effect there, and how the things that one individual can do can ripple out and affect the entire society. So first off, we are morally responsible to each other. And then second, we are responsible for our environment. This is the only planet in the universe that we can live on at this time. We rely on our planet Earth to sustain our lives. Yet every day we deplete the Earth of its natural resources and pollute the air, land, and seas. Even our food sources are polluted at this time. Food and water contaminated by pollution have been known to cause serious diseases within the human body. And it's up to everyone to take responsibility for preserving and caring for our planet's natural resources. And like the question was asked in a previous unit, would you leave these things up to someone else, right? Would you leave, the future of your society or even the development of your character up to someone else? No, we all have a responsibility, and we all should, of course, once we acquire knowledge and so forth, the proper knowledge and the true facts, do our part to help make society, the environment, and so forth a better place. So that's some of the things that were covered in the review of lesson 1 of the previous chapter there. And then on procedure number 2, it says inform students that today they will learn how to develop a responsible character, right? Because this applies to everyone. Everyone. It's necessary, it's essential, it's vital that we all develop this responsible character. They will focus on how practicing self-control and having compassion for others and consistently having a positive work ethic are important to the development of a positive character. And then have students turn to page 21 in the student handbook and read the introduction. Allow time for students to complete the pop quiz found on page 22 and explain that A and B answers are not choices that a responsible person would make. Emphasize that knowing which areas they need improvement is an excellent way to begin the process of developing responsibility as a character trait. And we'll probably come back to that from the next teacher when they go back and do the pop quiz found on page 22. That'll make a lot more sense when we get to it. But let's go over here real quick and we'll turn over to page 21. And we'll get into the introduction here on page 21. And notice the little box at the very top there. It says in the quotations there, your thoughts become your words. Your words lead to your actions, and your actions define your character. Now, I want you all to notice something in there that is consistent through each one of those statements. And do you know what the key word is I'm looking at? Your. That's right. Remember, a part of responsibility is, we are accountable. We are accountable for ourselves, and the student has to learn that their thoughts, their words, and their actions are going to determine their character. It's not going to be what somebody else did. They can't blame somebody else. Somebody could influence them. Somebody could lie to them, right? Somebody could try to persuade or pressure them to do something or to make a choice, but when it comes down to it, it's their own decisions and actions that will determine their character. So, of course, we want to really drive home to the student that they have the power, right, to develop a positive character by being responsible and accountable for their thoughts, their feelings, their actions, their choices, and so forth. So it says, Chapter 2, Developing a Responsible Character, Introduction. Developing the trait of responsibility is a process that occurs gradually. Each duty that you fulfill brings you one step closer to becoming responsible. And I think I think it's gradual there. The slide for gradual, because I got the definition of that, because we hear that word actually in a lot of different things. Gradual, you hear it in the word like grade or degrade or even degrees. It has to do with something that occurs slowly, as you can see in the definition under the word gradual. It says happening or changing slowly over a long period of time or distance, changing or developing slowly or by small degrees. And this is how responsibility and all other character traits are developed. You even notice it with learning, right? When you learn, you go from what to what? In the education system, you go from what to what? You go from one grade to another, right? And you keep stepping up. What do they call the people who are like in a grade higher than you? What do they call them? What do they call them? Upperclassmen, right? Upperclassmen. So whether they act like that, sometimes they might act uppity, but they're upperclassmen. So you're reaching another grade or another level in this case, the education system. Okay. It also shows your steps of learning too when you're graded, right? The teacher grades your paper, and I used to not like to see that red ink on my paper. I would just be praying that it was an E. I did a few times before I learned the peaceful solution, change an F into an E, because I didn't want my mom finding out that I had a big old fat F on my page. So, it's amazing what a a child will do when there's determination in their heart to not get in trouble. But it's not hard to change a E to a F to a E. But it says changing or developing slowly or by small degrees. And the etymology of that word gradual, the Latin gradus, it means a step, a pace, a gait, figuratively, a step towards something, a degree of something by rising by stages. So it's something that we actually should be improving at, right? And in this case, developing the character trait of responsibility. The person, the student, should be getting better at it over a period of time, but it's not instant. Grady also means to walk, step, or go. Okay. So it says each duty that you fulfill brings you one step closer to becoming responsible. In fact, a responsible person can be compared to building a brick wall. And then for my last slide there, building a brick wall, because I'm not a mason. You know, I know we have some here that have been for a very long time, you know, bricklayers and, you know, people who know how to lay bricks and stone and so forth. But you notice here, you know, when you're laying brick, and I didn't know this, but I always noticed it, you know, until I educated myself and found out. Depending on the brick and whether it's a face wall or whatever it is, you know, if it's solid, you know, stones or the different types of bricks, and I know there's so many, I don't even know what they all are, but you can only lay so many courses per day, right? You see those mortar, those joints right there that's made of mortar. If you lay too much on them, you can actually weaken the joint or weaken the wall. You can smash it out because it's too heavy. And certain bricks or stones, from what I understand, you can only lay, you know, sometimes 5 courses, maybe 10 courses or 15 courses per day, and you have to let it set. And then you can come back and you can lay some more. Well, it's the same thing with learning. It's the same thing with developing a positive character, as we just read here. It's like building a brick wall and all the choices. You can't just take it all and build it all in one day. As they say, you know, positive character wasn't built in a day. I don't know if they said that, but it's over a period of time. It's gradual, just like laying a brick. And if you don't follow the system or the rules to building this positive character, eventually your defenses are going to be weak and you're going to stumble when adversity or difficulties come. When you're faced with making a moral choice, you won't have let this role have cured, or the lessons you've learned in character or acceptance or whatever have fully being strengthened in your mind and heart, and then it'll crumble. So that's why it's important as teachers, you know, that we teach our students in the lessons as they're laid out, and make sure that these things are solidified in their hearts and minds, right, before we lay that next course there. Otherwise, when we get farther down the road, you know, they won't remember, right? Or they're going to fall back on it or whatnot. And of course, we'll have to go back and fix that wall again, lay that another course of brick or whatever the case might be. But remember, it's just like this. And we use these metaphors, these analogies and so forth, because it paints a picture in the mind of the student of what we're doing with them building their character. So we're going to stop here on page 21, right about the middle part there in the introduction there, in chapter 2. And stay tuned, because our next class is going to be this upcoming Sunday, December 17th, 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we look forward to seeing you there. Hope everyone has a wonderful evening and a great rest of your week. Thank you for coming to class.